Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think the panel has already been introduced, so I will not spend too much of time in introducing each of them. To my extreme left is Dileep Choksi, CC Choksi Advisors. To his right is Abhijit Joshi, Senior Partner and CEO of AZB, the law firm, one of the leading law firms in India. To my left is Atul from Merrill Lynch, and my name is Pranav Sayta. We've already been introduced by Neha. Thanks so much. We'll straight away take off with the delay that we already have. So we have probably a truncated session of about 35 minutes remaining. What we are trying to discuss today is the integrated structuring and integrated service offering for onshore and offshore wealth. As we know, the Indian diaspora across the world is probably one of the largest. We are big savers, known across the world to be big savers, and generally intelligent investors. No doubt about the fact that the kind of private wealth that we see in India is presently huge. We have all kinds of structuring and related issues, challenges that we have to deal with, especially considering the geographic spread that one wants for the de-risking of one investment and the allocation of assets across various classes. Given the kind of exchange control restrictions, the kind of tax laws that we have, typically the objectives that one sees amongst families while structuring their private wealth. So we have one of the best panels that one could hope for this morning to discuss various aspects concerning the structuring of such private wealth. My first question actually I would address to Atul, especially considering your rich experience in this field of wealth management, particularly dealing with various family offices and private wealth managers. What do you see in your experience as the primary objectives and key drivers while structuring such a portfolio, managing wealth, growing wealth that you see, especially when you talk of Indian families both in India and abroad having assets across the world? So if you can start off with some of your experiences of what their key objectives and drivers are, that would be great.
Thanks, Pranav. I would say, I would start with by saying that we have about 1100, 1200 top families that we manage wealth for, and I can tell you that almost these days, almost every conversation with the client is about offshore and onshore.
Right.
So there is dramatic shift in the last 5 years we have seen where people have started thinking about offshore almost as an integral sort of item in their portfolio rather than as a luxury. And
and the exchange control relaxations where you allowed $200,000 per individual per year have also facilitated all of that over the last few years probably.
That has, but that's one of the vehicles, right? So the kind of families we are talking about have many other ways and means,
sure, absolutely.
And that's when you come to
ODI
the right structuring. So
right.
So the means are available now. It's a matter of mindset.
Correct.
And clearly Indian investors, large families, large family offices especially, have understood that you cannot create sustainable wealth, multi-generational wealth by being in Indian rupee only.
Right.
Right? It is a depreciating bias currency. Unless we get our inflation down and get the growth up, the currency over time will depreciate, will lose its purchasing power. So when family offices think about philanthropy that sustains multiple generations, etc., their corpuses have to retain the purchasing power over multiple generations.
Absolutely.
And you just cannot do that. I mean, it's just mathematically impossible to have that if your money is all in Indian rupee. So almost every family, starting from very top and big family offices down to even sort of moderately wealthy folks, they are thinking about parking part of their assets in a non-Indian rupee currency. Now, those assets could be portfolio assets, those assets could be real estate, but that thinking of having some park of value abroad is constantly running across the families. And for a firm like us, with the foreign DNA, we obviously thrive on that, right? And we like that, and we want to build on that, and we want to use that as our competitive edge to penetrate these clients and service them across both sides. Now, very quickly, I would close with saying that what kind of sort of segments do you see? So there are clearly three types of conversations with clients. So one is clients who have never put money abroad, and they're thinking about, what is the right structure? Is it, opening a wholly owned subsidiary abroad or using the LRS scheme, etc. So that's one conversation. The service model and the help they require is very different. Then there is other segment where they are much evolved in their thinking and planning, and they have actually have money abroad. So either one of their family members is living abroad, or they have a company that is generating cash abroad, and they need help in portfolio management and tightly coupling that portfolio with the onshore wealth management that we are doing already with the client. And then the third segment, which I'm very excited about and which we see more and more, is the new age money, right? When the new age wealth gets created in the last 5 to 10 years, they have already structured their business in the right manner, so that when they get liquidity, either by selling it to a foreign investor or doing any other M&A or private equity, large part of that corpus actually gets accumulated abroad. Now, they have already taken care in the last 6, 7, 10 years to actually structure their companies appropriately, and they're just waiting for whenever that liquidity happens, they would already get the cash abroad. So those are the three sort of large segments. We serve all three in very different ways, but as I said, the conversation runs across.
Right. So also, I mean, Dileep bhai and Abhijit, in your experience, as you see, large families and very high net worth individuals, do you also see objectives which are, for example, philanthropic side of it? Do you see typically they wanting to having this constant tug of war between giving flexibility to the families, at the same time ensuring joint continuity, longevity, and so on? And how do you typically see families evolving their objectives and achieving them through the structures that you have probably seen in your experience?
I would put it this way. Where the Indian family is concerned, it is different from the families elsewhere. Almost all businesses in India are family owned. And probably that's the reason for India's success and rising success in the economic world. The result is that every family owns businesses in India, and the enterprising nature of an Indian makes that family own businesses abroad. The question therefore is, how do you structure a holding both in India and outside India? Given the fact that it is family owned, the Indian family would like to exercise a certain amount of control in India as well as a certain amount of control outside India. As education grows and the younger generation becomes brighter, it's not only the traditional business that the family looks to, it also looks to expansion. The world has now become a very large departmental store, and therefore one goes shopping anywhere in the world, and one therefore requires structures that will enable them to acquire businesses in promotion of their Indian business, or additional businesses which are unconnected with their businesses in India abroad. You therefore need structures which will give you uniformity of control, ensure that the business which the golden hen, or shall I say the hen that lays the golden egg, is not slashed in over-expansion. At the same time, every family member, whether one is going into newer businesses or existing businesses, needs to be compensated from the wealth that is being generated by the Indian business. With this, you also have social challenges. You have challenged children, you have marriages that have not been sustained, you have elderly parents, in addition to the one that you mentioned, Pranav, about people having philanthropic objectives come here. As they often say that every Indian who is born is a pilgrim. So you want to go back to your place of your village, you want to go back to your deity, you want to do something for your family, you want to do something for your village. And what happens is that you have legislation like the Companies Act, which gives you the ability to set aside something for CR compulsorily or voluntarily, which has been done in the past because so many philanthropic institutions are maintained. At the same time, the integrity of the family has to be kept together, as well as the family has to expand, because the Indian families are today now hitting the 500, if not the 100 mark on wealth and wealth creation. So the nature of structures, as Atul said, is going to change from trusts to discretionary trusts to generation skipping trusts, so that if what you accumulate is not lost in liabilities, whether if you're a doctor or an architect, or by estate duty if you happen to be in the UK or the United States. At the same time, the respect to the patriarch is maintained to say that a time comes when you say, I will give up this for the sake of the family. That's the uniqueness of the Indian business, and that's what has to be preserved with the new structures that will evolve.
Right. So Abhijit, you would like to supplement what Dileep?
Yeah, I think so. We are in in a sense, evolutionary phase. So, you know, in a gathering like this may not have been done 10 years back or 5 years back. There's a reason why this generates so much of interest just now. Wealth creation and wealth preservation through 2 generations are different concepts. The Indian entrepreneur has been busy creating in an economic evolution of 20 years. Wealth creation has taken predominant stage in almost 2 decades. And now suddenly you realize that there is so much of wealth inside and outside India, and those needs to be preserved. There are taxation, death and taxes. There are 2 certainties in life, and everybody tries to obviate that one way or the other. But I think, as Dileep bhai is saying, structures will evolve. But as I said, the old generation is still not out. The need for control is quite predominant. Faith in structures is limited in that generation because they have seen a different part of life, and the new generation is yet not in saddle. So we are in a kind of a metamorphosis going forward, but this will ultimately evolve where it has evolved in the West or the first world countries, where serious amount of wealth has been created and preserved for generations together.
Right. So both Abhijit and Atul, I think, alluded to the fact that how large this particular opportunity is. A recent study by BCG actually tells us that India is poised to become the 7th largest country in terms of private wealth and management. We are presently probably at around $2 trillion, which is not small. I was myself quite surprised at the number, to be honest. And they say that it will grow to almost $5 trillion by 2018. So that's a huge, huge number. And probably there's so much interest right now in this particular field that it's difficult to describe. Coming back, Abhijit, to you. So in terms of the criteria, the parameters, what you look at while you are devising structures, what are those key parameters? And this is essentially for Abhijit, you, and probably then Dileep by you. What do you typically look at as the key criteria, whether it is tax, whether it is the objectives and drivers of the family concerned, whether it is regulatory environment? What is it that you essentially focus on in terms of criteria while building these structures in terms of both offshore and onshore wealth, growing and managing it?
So, Pranav, howsoever complex the structures are, I believe the issues are always elementary. And I think with every family...
The solutions are not, I guess.
Sorry?
Issues might be elementary, the solutions are not.
Solutions are not, but the question is, I think, you know, it's not a cut and paste job. Family to family objectives differ. Families to family, family to family, there are certain questions to be asked. The next generation interested in coming into business. How complex is the web of the businesses at present? You know, we have typical Indian families who have had 200 companies. Every time they've had to bid for a project, they've had a company. They have moved entries around it. Hundreds and thousands of crores of debt is moving between companies. And suddenly you find an umbilical cord into equity which has gone abroad. So how complex the structures are? What is the appetite of the second generation to handle complexities? And generally speaking, the second generation has lesser appetite in terms of handling complexities. Then coming in terms of the control factors of the patriarch of the family and the security or insecurity of the second generation. And round these blocks of objectives, you build structures. Ultimately, you know, it is said that a draft must follow a thought. Thought cannot follow a draft. But often in the maze of structuring and give me a solution, people start jumping into solutions and say we can do a trust, we can do a discretionary trust, you can do a will, you can say vested duty here, you can do that. I think the vested duty is going to come, it is going to contain the previous vested duty said that. So I think you have to take a step back, understand the objectives and give the best solutions which are in the interest of the client. Product pushing, at least in the Indian environment, can become counterproductive.
So Dileep bhai, coming over to you, typically what are the kinds of structures, options, methods you've seen, especially let's take the case of an Indian resident family having assets abroad as well as India. What typical structures have you seen considering most Indian families? And I know completely agree with